Hey guys, today we are back to solving systems of equations. So it's just like what we did earlier where we're going to solve with substitution, with elimination, all of that. However, we are going to solve these using a quadratic equation and a linear equation. So we're kind of like throwing two together. And we're going to talk about the three ways that we can solve these. We can solve these by substitution, by elimination, or by graphing. So we should know by now a little bit how to solve systems of equations, but here are the steps up here, but we're going to dive right in. My first step always is I take both my equations, I write them out beside each other, I give myself plenty of space. So I'm going to write out here first x squared equals 2y, and I'm also going to write out y equals 4 minus x. Now, this first system of equations, we're using substitution, meaning I'm going to take this first guy and I'm going to substitute it in for this one over here. So our first step was we solve for an x or solve for a y, and then I can substitute that in, and that can help me solve. So let's take this value for y, because we already have this y solved for, and let's substitute it in for y in my other equation, okay? So kind of give ourselves some space here. We're going to take this value for 4 minus x, and we're going to plug it in for y over here. So since this y equals 4 minus x, then this y must also equal 4 minus x. So this we're going to have x squared equals 2 times 4 minus x. And then we're just going to get some work done trying to simplify this, okay? So we're going to first distribute 2 times 4, 2 times negative x. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times negative x is going to be negative 2x. All right, so we have this problem here, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to solve it just like we've done everything else. We're first going to check and see if I can factor it, because we always want to check and see, because factoring is the easiest way to solve a quadratic equation. But you can solve any equation using the quadratic formula, by difference of squares, by even the square root method on some of them. So be sure to check and see, hey, maybe I can solve this a different way. All right? So let's go ahead. Let's move my 2x over. Let's minus my 8. Let's add 2x. Let's minus 8. And we're going to get x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. And then let's see if I can factor it before we try all the other fancier methods. So let's go ahead, let's go over here, let's do my x and my plus. Remember, it's been a while since we've done this. On top of my x goes a times c, on bottom goes b, and then we'll plug that into my plus. So my a is 1, my b is 2, and my c is negative 8. So negative 8 times 1 is just negative 8 on top. We have a 2 on bottom. So we're thinking, are there two numbers that multiply to equal negative 8 but add to equal 2? And yes, there are. My two numbers are going to be 4 and negative 2. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 4 plus negative 2 is 2. So those are my numbers, 4 and negative 2. Okay, so we have an x plus 4, a 1x. We have a 1x plus 4 and a 1x minus 2. Those are my factors. So we're going to get 1x plus 4 times 1x minus 2 equals 0. Now, if you remember how to solve these quadratics by factoring, we're going to take each one of those factors and set them both equal to 0. So I'm going to take x plus 4. Don't need the parentheses anymore. We're going to go x plus 4 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. So after I solve for x here, minus 4 to both sides, we get x equals negative 4. And once I've added 2 to both sides here, we get x equals 2. So there you go. X equals negative 4 and x equals 2. So like this, we're going to get 2 points that these intersect. Because think about it. We have a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation has a graph that looks like a parabola. And we also have a linear equation. A linear equation has a graph that's straight line. So when you have these two together, it makes sense that they're going to intersect in two spaces. So we have an x equals -4 and an x equals 2. So we could have a point at -4 and something. We could also have a point at 2 and something. Okay? We just have to figure out what those somethings are. So what I like to do is I like to take my points, plug them back into my other side of my equation. So I'm going to take that -4, plug that one back in over here. So we're going to go y equals 4 minus a -4. 4 minus -4 is 4 plus 4, so that's going to be y equals 8. So we're going to have a point here at -4, 8. That's going to be one of my answers. Another answer is we can take this 2 and plug that 2 in over here. We can go y equals 4 minus 2. And 4 minus 2 is, of course, 2. So we go 4 minus 2. 4 minus 2 is, of course, 2. So when x is 2, y is 2. So this one's going to be 2 and 2. So here are my 2 points. And these are my answers. We have an answer of x equals 2 when y equals 2. And we have an answer of x equals -4 when y equals 8. And those are the points, like this, where they intersect at. Okay? So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those intersection points. We found them. All right, let's try another one. Let's take number 2 here, for instance. So first step, write it out, right? We're gonna take our 2 things. We're gonna make sure we have lots of space, and we're gonna write this guy out. We're gonna write out y equals x squared minus 1, and I'm gonna write out -7 equals -x squared minus y. Okay, now I have a variable solved for. I already have this y solved for, so I don't have to solve for my y at all. So let's take this value for y and plug it in for y all the way over here, okay? So we're going to get -7 equals -x squared minus, and I'm going to build a parentheses. That way I don't forget to distribute, right? So we're going to minus a parentheses of x squared minus 1. Okay, now here's where I need to distribute that negative. You go negative times x squared, negative times -1. We're going to get -7 equals -x squared minus x squared plus 1. Crazy talk, right? So then we're going to combine like terms. -x squared minus x squared is -2x squared. And why don't we go ahead in this step, let's go ahead and add this 7 over to this side, okay? So that's going to give me plus 8. All right, so let's write this out. We're going to have 0 equals -2x squared plus 8. All right, now we're going to have to take some extreme steps here. Now I need to pull out, we need to once again factor this, right? And so to factor this out effectively, we're first going to need to pull out a GCF. And my GCF for this one's going to be -2. Remember, we don't want my a to be negative. So we're going to divide both of these by -2. So we're going to get -2 times x squared minus 4 equals 0. All right. Now, x squared minus 4. I know it's been a long time since we have done this, but that x squared minus 4 is what we call a difference of squares. It's important that we remember all the different ways to factor. Now, remember, difference of squares, that's a squared, let me write some more space here. A squared minus b squared. So if we have 2 perfect squares minusing each other, subtracting difference of squares, that's going to be equal to the square root of a squared, which is a, plus the square root of b squared, which is b, times a minus b. So we're just square rooting, writing it down. So x squared minus 4 is going to factor to be x plus 2 times x minus 2. Okay? So This is it factored out. Okay? So now, all of this equals 0. So now we just need to take my factors and set them equal to 0. So I'm going to take x plus 2, set that equal to 0, and I'm going to take x minus 2 and set that equal to 0. So here, all I need to do to solve is minus 2 to both sides and get x equals negative 2. Here, I need to add 2 to both sides, and I get x equals positive 2. So, those are my answers for my x's. So, at the end, I know that we're going to have a point at negative 2 something and a point at positive 2 something. Now I need to figure out what my y's are. So I take my two x's, plug it back in for x, and find what my y's are. So let's do that. Let's take my negative 2, plug that in. We're going to go y equals negative 2 squared minus 1. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So when it's negative 2, we're going to have an answer of 3. Okay, now let's try what happens when we have a positive 2. Whenever I have a positive 2, we go y equals 2 squared minus 1. Well, 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3, so y equals 3. Hey, it's 3 again. Don't let that freak you out because they're both squared. You get the same answer after you plug it in. So there's our answers, negative 2, 3, and positive 2, 3. Okay? There are two answers. So for each one of these problems, you're probably most likely going to get two answers. Technically, you can get one or none, but for most of these, you're going to get two. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the page. And let's talk about elimination. Now, elimination is honestly one of my favorite ways to solve it because all we do is, remember, we match it up where it'll cancel out, and then we just kind of, put it together. So let's write this out here. Remember, I always like to write them out side by side and give myself plenty of space. So I'm going to write out 2x squared minus 3x minus y equals negative 5. And I also, on this side, I'm going to have negative x plus y equals positive 5. Okay, here's the thing. We need to make sure that we have an x squared column, an x column, a y column, and a whole number column, and that they're in the right order. So we're going to check here. Okay, so we have my whole numbers. They're both on the right side. Good. We have my y's. Good. We have my x's. Good. And then I have my x squared. There's no x squared here, so I don't have to worry about it. So then I'm going to take this whole equation, and I'm just going to write it out underneath this. Because look at this. We have a negative 1y and a positive 1y. If I just add these two equations together, it's going to cancel out the y's, and then I can solve for x, and then there we go. So let's take this and let's write it underneath here. So let's go negative x plus 1y equals 5. If there's nothing here, there's nothing here. We don't have to worry about it, right? And then we just add it. So 2x squared and 0 makes 2x squared. Negative 3x minus x is negative 4x. Negative 1y plus y is 0 y's. It cancels out. That's the whole reason we're doing this. And then negative 5 plus 5 is 0. Now I can solve this for my x's. So we can factor out my x's. We can simplify it, but the whole thing is we eliminate. And once we eliminate, it makes it a lot easier. So we eliminated here, and we're going to factor out my GCF first, right? So my GCF for this one is going to be 2x. Notice how they both have an x in common when it equals 0. So we're going to divide this one by 2x, divide this one by 2x, and we're going to get 2x out in front times x minus 2 equals 0. Set my factors equal to 0. We're going to get 2x equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. Solve for x now. Divide this side by 2. We get x equals 0. Add 2 to both sides here, and we get x equals positive 2. So here are my two answers for x's, okay? There are my two answers. We're going to have a 0 and something, and we're going to have a 2 and something. So now we have to figure out what those y's are. So we take my x's back, plug them back in, use your other equation. I'm going to do some finagling on this equation real quick, okay? I'm going to add x to both sides. That way I can get y by itself and make it a lot easier. Look what I do, okay? So if I add x to both sides, we're going to get y equals x plus 5. Now we just take my answers here, plug them in, it all works out, okay? So we're going to go y equals 0 plus 5. Obviously that's just 5. So my other answer is 5. Then we can take my 2, plug that in, we can go y equals 2 plus 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. So we're going to have a point at 2, 7. So these are my 2 points. We have a point at 0, 5 and a point at 2, 7. Okay, now let's go to number 5. And let's solve this one through elimination. This one is a beefy one, isn't it? Okay, so let's start off. Let's write our two things out beside each other. Give ourselves plenty of space. Let's go negative 10x squared plus y equals negative 80x plus 155. That's my first equation. My second equation is going to be 5x squared plus y equals 40x minus 85. Okay, now here's the deal. We need to make sure they're lined up first. So we have my x squared, it's good. We have my y's, we have my equal sign, we have my x's, and we have my whole numbers. Hey, it's all lined up. We didn't have to do anything. Now we're going to try to cancel out my y's. Look, this y is positive, this y is also a positive. Remember, whenever we combine our two equations, we need to make sure one's positive, one's negative. That way it cancels. So we're going to change this y to be a negative y. To get that y to a negative y, I had to multiply by negative 1. So we're going to multiply everything by negative 1, okay? So 5x squared times negative 1 is going to be a negative 5x squared. 40x times negative 1 is going to be a negative 40x. And negative 85 times negative 1 is going to be a positive 85. Okay? Now, let's take this entire thing and let's rewrite it underneath this. So we're going to rewrite negative 5x squared minus y equals negative 40x plus 85. Now, we're going to add our two equations together and combine like terms. So negative 10x squared minus 5x squared is negative 15x squared. These two, this is why we're doing it, cancel. So it leaves me with an equation that only has x's in it. Then, negative 80x minus 40x is going to be negative 120x. 155 plus 85. 155 plus 85 is going to be, well, let's see here. It's going to be 155 plus 85 is going to be 240. Okay, so now here's what we need to do. We need to move everything to one side of my equation, right? So we're going to take this 120, this 240, we're going to move both of those over. So I'm going to go plus 120x minus 240 plus 120x minus 240. Move it from this side, so we're going to have negative 15x squared plus 120x minus 240 equals 0. Then we're going to try to factor it, okay? We could use the quadratic formula, we could try to complete the square or whatever, but we're going to try to factor it because that's the easiest way. So remember, to factor, our first step is we're going to look for a GCF. my GCF here looks like it's going to be negative 15. Let's see. So I know it's going to be negative because we can't have a negative, but let's see if I can divide everything by negative 15. Okay, obviously negative 15 can divide by negative 15. 120 can divide by negative 15. So we're going to have negative 15 out in front. We're going to go negative 15 out in front. So we'll have negative 15 parentheses x squared, because that's what's left after we divide, minus 8x. And then let's see here, 240 divided by 15 is going to be 16. So we're going to have a positive 16 here on the end equals 0. Okay, then we're going to need to focus on doing like my x and my plus. So we're going to do my x and my plus. For my x, my a is 1. My a is 1, my b is negative 8, and my c is 16. So we're going to go 16 times 1 on top. So I have a 16 on top, a negative 8 on bottom. Two numbers that multiply to equal 16, but add to equal negative 8 are going to be negative 4 and negative 4. So those are going to be my factors here. Then we're going to be like, okay, so that means we have my a is 1, so we're going to have 1x, 1x. So those are my factors. We'll have negative 15 times x minus 4 times x minus 4 equals 0. Then we're going to take both my factors that have an x in it. We're going to set them both equal to 0. So we're going to go x minus 4 equals 0 and x minus 4 equals 0. So x equals positive 4 after I add 4 to both sides, and x equals positive 4. So we get the same answer twice. Well, that just means that we only have one solution. That means for these two problems, we have like a quadratic equation here and a quadratic equation here. They just intercept one time, okay? So that's okay. They just intercept one time. No big deal. So let's take these two, let's take this one answer, right? We only have to deal with it one time. Let's take that x equals 4. Let's plug it back in. We're only going to have one answer for this problem. So let's take my original equation over here on this side. This one is 5x squared plus y equals 40x minus 85. And let's replace this x and this x with a 4. So I'm going to replace this with a 4 here, and I'm going to replace this with a 4, and we're going to solve for that y right there. So 4 squared is 16. 16 times 5 is 80. So this is going to be 80 plus y on this side. And then we have 40 times 4, of course, is going to be 160. Okay, so now it's super easy. 160 minus 85 is 75. Minus 80 to both sides. And we get our answer here of y equals negative 5. So my x equals 4, my y equals 5. We only have to do it once because we only have one answer for x. So my big answer at the end, right here, is going to be 4, negative 5. My x is 4, my y is negative 5. There's my answer. All right, guys, so that's elimination. Now, I know it seems long. We're going to have plenty of time to work on this, okay? So now let's go ahead. Let's turn the page. Let's go here. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to match each system with its graph and kind of explain our reasoning a little bit. And then we're going to solve the system using the graph. So let's start here at number 6. So we have two quadratic equations. So first off, two quadratics. So that means we're going to have two parabolas. So we know it's not going to be A, and so it's either going to be B or C. So let's see here. Let's see if we can figure this out. Okay, remember what we know about standard form. We know that this right here is my y-intercepts. Your C is your y-intercept. So let's see if we can find one that has a y-intercept of 4 and a y-intercept of 2. Hey, it's down here. Look at this. Letter C. We have a y-intercept of 4 and a y-intercept of -2. So these match up. This one doesn't. We know it's not A because it doesn't have a linear. So it's going to be C. All right. So if this one is C, now we're going to see if we can find the actual answers. So my answers are where it intercepts at. So whenever you're solving these, you can always check your answer by using your calculator or going to desmos.com. Remember, that's desmos.com. I'm going to write that down here. desmos.com. It's a graphing calculator, and you can find where your two things intercept at. Just click on the graph. Okay, so this one intercepts at 1, 1, and this one is at 3, 1. So those are my solutions for number 6. We're going to have one of my answers is going to be 1, 1, and one of my answers is going to be 3, 1. Okay, now let's try number 7. So number 7, we have y equals x plus 2, and we have this quadratic. So we have one linear, one quadratic. So I know that one's not going to be B, because B has 2 quadratics. So this one's going to be A, right? This one's going to be A, because we have one linear and one quadratic. Then let's find our answers. We're going to have an answer here, right? It's where they intersect at. So we're going to have an answer at -2, 0, and we're going to have an answer at 0, 2. All right, so those are my answers for this one. -2, 0, and 0, 2. Okay, our last one, number 8. Number 8, we know it's B. We have 2 perfect quadratics here. We know one. We could find our axis of symmetry. We could find our vertex using -b over 2a. We have all of those resources available to us. So all I need to do here is find where they intersect. We know this one is B. So we know this one is B, and we can see that they intersect only at one point, right there at -1, 2, 3, 4, up 2. So that one's going to be at -4, 2. All right, guys, remember, use desmos.com, and you can plug in your 2 equations, even if it's a substitution or elimination. You can check and see where does it intersect at, okay? Use your calculator. Use the resources available to you. All right, guys, that was solving quadratic and linear systems using the 3 separate ways: substitution, elimination, and graphing. Hope this video was of help to you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys.